Okay, so we're going to have a little go at extending what we did last week, working with a camera, one light, and this week the difference is we're going to add an image plate to the camera. So we're going to do a little bit of camera matching. Okay, here we go. So to begin with, let's create that camera. So create camera, there it is. Let's give it a name straight off, so we'll call it projector cam. Okay, and I also know that the image that I'm going to use was shot with a 40mm lens. So under here where it says focal length, I'm going to change that to 40 because as I say, I know that the image was a 40mm lens. I'll just show it to you. Show you the image. This is going to be the image that I'm going to use. It can be any image. The EXIF or the metadata in most cameras will be stored inside a program like Bridge and Accessible, and it tells you in here somewhere, I can't quite see it, f-stop 6.3, 1600 shutter speed, ISO 200, and somewhere it tells me, there it is, focal length on a 35mm film. A film camera, it is equivalent to a 40mm lens. Okay, so that's why I'm setting that back into Maya. Okay, so we've set the focal length, and what we've got to do straight away is go to the Environment tab, and I'm going to add that image that I've just referenced just by clicking the image name folder. I've already got it saved inside my default source images folder. Once again, just looking at the way that Maya stores its files, it's inside the project folder, default source images. That's where I place my image. You may have yours somewhere else. Okay, and just to look inside, that's what we've currently got in the scene. A camera, and the camera's projecting this image plane here. Now that image plane, I believe, is something like 4592 pixels by 3448 it is. So what I'm going to do is, I'm using the Arnold render engine. So I'm going to go to Arnold settings, and I'm just going to change the output image format to TIFF, and the image size I'm going to set to custom, and the pixels were 4592 by 3448. That's a pretty large file. The ratio is now correct. The width and height ratio is correct. So what I'll do is I'll click that button there, and I'll just reduce the outside file ratio size to 2000 pixels. And if I hit the tab button, that's not quite worked out. We'll do that again. So it was 4592 by 3448. I'll hit that maintain width and height ratio button now, and I'll just change that to 2000 pixels. And hitting tab will change the height ratio, or the height dimension in the correct ratio with the width. So I'll close that down. And in my panels, I'll go to the projector cam, and I'll use the resolution gate. Okay, so now that I've got the resolution gate set, the only thing I'm seeing in the scene is my image plane. If I go across and show you the quad view, you'll still see that the only things in the scene, of course, are the camera and the image plane. Okay, so back into panels, projector cam. Okay, and we're going to add some very basic geometry to get this scene up and running. Okay, one second. Okay, so now that we've got the image plane in place, we just need to do a rough alignment of the grid to some piece of geometry in the image. So I'm just using the middle mouse button and the Alt key to just push the grid into alignment, I'm obviously looking for that line along there to try and align it up with. Now, what you might find is that it gets a little bit difficult to align the image plane. Maybe the image itself is a little bit too strong. So if you go to click on Projector Cam and go across to in the attribute editor, go across to image plane, you can drop the alpha gain down a little bit, and sometimes that just helps you see the ground plane or the grid a little bit easier. And we want to obviously try and find some lines. Now, there are not too many lines to latch onto. It's not like I'm looking down a road or something. Perhaps I should have selected a better image, but anyway, I think I'll just about get away with this one. So let's have a little look. Align the image. I'm just rotating it round like so, and down again. I would say this can take quite a few minutes to get right, but it's imperative really that you take the time to do it. So just take your time and align it. Get it as close as you can. Okay, looks pretty good. Alright, so what we're going to do, I think that looks okay. Yeah, for what I need, it's probably going to be fine. So what we're going to do, now that I've done that, I'll put the alpha gain back up. And I'll add a ground plane. So just up under the poly modeling surface menu, just click on ground plane. And we're just going to scale that ground plane now that it's in position. Yeah, I've got a little bit of a cold going on, so if I start sneezing or sniffing, I do apologise. Okay, so that ground plane basically is just sliding into place there, following the grid that we set up earlier. Its function will be just to actually collect shadows. We're going to use something called a shadow mat on there, so we're not actually going to see that in the final render. It's just going to be a plane that will offer shadows. Okay, so we put our ground plane in. Let's put in a simple object to cast a shadow, rather large cube, so let's reduce the scale of that cube. In fact, why don't I just do it over here? I'll just reduce it down, and there we go. Okay, and just align it over there, somewhere like that. Okay, so ground plane, cube, all I really need now is a light. To be honest, later on we could do this in a more complicated way and use a skylight and a HDR map to go with it, but for the time being let's just use an Arnold light, and we'll use an area light. Okay, so click area light, and in it arrives to the scene, and again I'm just going to give that a little scale like that. There we go. Scale the line, lift into position, give it a little rotation, and it's going to point downwards like so. Lift it up and back. Okay, so we have done a little bit of work with lights last week. We spent a bit of time with them, so we're going to have to remember what we learned last week in terms of intensity and how the Arnold light relates back to the camera. So let's spend a few minutes just getting that lighting source just right. Okay. So I'm going to click the, where is it, the rendering tab, go to Arnold, and I'm just going to do a quick render of the scene to see how it looks. Okay, there we go. So we've got our background plate, something not right here in the ratio, I'll have to look at that. But we've got our background plate, our ground plane, our object, and we've got some shadowing going on. Okay, so let's just firstly deal with the strength of those shadows, I think. So what I'll do is I'll go to area light, and I will go to look for the shadow density. I'm going to take the shadow density down a bit, and I'm going to just drop the shadow color back from pure black back a little bit. Okay, and then also I'm going to go to hypershade. So the Hypershade menu is where I can pick up my materials. So I'm going to go to Hypershade. Let's just drag that into the scene. I've got it on my second monitor. And what I'm going to do here is, just so you can see, I'm going to go to Arnold, Surface, and I'm going to use something called a shadow matte. Okay, shadow matte will allow us to basically just catch shadows and won't show the actual grey material at all. So what we'll do is we'll choose that shadow. We'll choose the background, the ground plane, I should say. Choose the ground plane. I'm just going to right click on it. I'm going to choose Assign Existing Material and Shadow Matte. Okay, if that has worked, when I now hit the renderer, that grey plane should in fact disappear, leaving us with the cube and a shadow which is, I've softened slightly, as you can see the density's been taken down. So that's kind of worked first time. We can get in and tweak this a little bit more, but I'll come to that in a second. Okay, so that kind of works. Okay, so just while I was about to look at the camera settings, I realized I hadn't done something really important, and I would urge you to do it straight away, is select your projector cam and hit the lock. Okay, in doing so, you won't do what I just did and completely mess up the settings that you've worked to create. So, just to recap, lock the camera as soon as you have it set up with the ground plane on the object and it's working. So I'll just do a second render. Okay, it is in there, it's working. I've got a little bit of nice light. I'm not sure about that underneath. There's some kind of weirdness there. I can see a little gap where the shadow's not quite coming. Now, I know from using other 3D software, sometimes you get a misalignment in the shadows. I'll have to look into that, what's causing that. But I've softened the shadow. I've got an object in. It's casting a light, and I've positioned the light that it's basically casting the light in the same direction as this object here in the scene. Okay. Okay, so I'm just looking at that shadow that was caused a little bit of issue under there, and I realised that the ground plane just needed to be lifted ever so slightly. Because the shadow is kind of contained in this area, it's fine. It's not perfectly aligned on there, but it's not bad. But it'll probably work just fine doing that. So I hit the render button one more time. The shadow looks a lot tighter now. Much tighter along the edge. And it's got the same sort of density as that. I guess I could go back and look at the colour and the density a little bit more of the shadow. One thing I have done, and you may not have done, is under the area light settings, I've changed the sample resolution to 2048. That's to give us slightly, basically it's a 2K sample size. And given that we used output size of roughly 2K, it seems appropriate to use that kind of sample size. So I changed the sample size for the area light to 2048. It's casting shadows, and I've changed the density ever so slightly. And you know, you can change the color a little bit as well, I guess. I'm going to put maybe a little, come out back in there. I'm just going to put a little tiny touch of blue in it. I think you find most of the time shadows do have a little touch of blue in them, and that's often to do, obviously, the sky. I think there's a touch more blue in that shadow over there. But anyway, that's for fine-tuning. Principally, we've set the camera up, we have an object in the scene, we have a ground plane, it's got a mask on it, a matte, on it, and this could be the scene for our animation. But I think that pretty much ties that one up. I'll just go, before I finish, I'll just go over to the perspective window and just look at the scene from the perspective window, and that's all that's in the scene. Ground plane receiving the shadows, a box to cast the shadows, our camera, one area light, and our image plane, which has been projected by the camera. So that's the whole scene in one. Okay, hope you found that easy enough to follow. Good luck. See what looking forward to seeing what you do with it. Okay, cheers.